It's the Rangers Journal Night.
Evening, everybody, and welcome to Rangers Journal podcast. I'm your host, Scott Mackay, and tonight we've got a wee bit of a debate show on for you. We did it 5, but some things happen, and we've only got 4 now. So I'm supposed to be here as the referee, and I suppose I'll be continuing in that role tonight. So the debate's going to be about youth football, whether you're for or against Rangers youth players being in the team. So before we get down to any of that, please like and subscribe to all our videos. Follow us on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram, and on Twitter as well if you're not already. First of all, I'm joined by a great panel of contestants tonight. Is that better than? Aye.
The set of debates, mate, but you know it works.
I mean, there's a prize. I win something.
Aye, we'll go with contestants. First in the blue corners, Dave. Dave, how are you getting on?
I am good, mate. Good.
You're set to put these two in their place, aye?
Aye. Certainly hope so, anyway.
And in a red corner, we've got Doug and Kev. Doug, how you doing, pal?
Not bad. Pleased to be in Team Youth. So looking forward to making an argument tonight. I would like to preface our discussion with not all viewpoints given. What are the viewpoints we may personally hold, but we will be arguing for the sake of making a good argument. So,
just for people in the comments, Dave is on his own tonight, so feel free to take advantage of it and slate him or join him, whatever you prefer.
Doug's already got his burner in the comments, Luke Scott.
Aye, that's right. Kev, how you doing, pal?
I'm good, mate. Better than what I was yesterday. I look forward to tonight's show, something a bit different, so I look forward to it.
Good stuff. So, how do we begin this? This is when you know you've not got an agenda sorted because it's a debate. Dave, we'll come to you first. Why do you think youth should have an impact on the Rangers first team?
So quite simply, mate, I think it's the only way, really, that we can achieve the club's strategic objectives. We've spent all summer listening to the fact that, you know, we need to cut costs, we need to be selling players at a profit. Youth is the natural way to do that, and there's tons of clubs out there that have done exactly that. You look at some of the best academies out there. I mean, take a look at Ajax as an example. They're a really good example of developing their own kind of players and then punting them on for big, decent profit. Obviously, we're not going to be getting the fees they do, but it's still the way forward for me.
Any of you guys want to come in on that? Doug, will come to you first.
Well, I think the biggest and most obvious argument against dedicating too much towards youth football is that youth football isn't a club singular thing. For youth football to work, it needs to be within a well-organised national system. And Scotland doesn't have that, and I don't think it's anywhere near having it because clubs don't work well enough together with one another. We've said it time and time again in previous pods when we've talked about youth. They've nobody to play. So what's the point in having a system where people are just sitting about and kicking the ball amongst themselves or playing a game every couple of months against random opponents? If the system that we work within isn't there, then we need to come up with something else.
And probably just to add to that slightly what Doug was saying, and probably stay a point of what Dave was mentioning as well. I think when you look at some of these clubs abroad, maybe like your Ajaxes, your Barcelonas, these teams that are like selling players on for big fees through their youth system, just what Doug's saying, that the setup abroad is so much better. These guys are in playing competitive games from that age and lower divisions. And the problem that we've got, not just at Rangers, but in Scotland in general, is that the guys aren't even playing competitive football right now. I know they've done the whole trial piece of the Lowland League. It probably didn't work out as well as what some thought it would be. I know Celtic and Hearts, they've continued to stay in that Lowland League. They're not exactly pulling in big fees for youth players either, nor is there interest in it. I think the reason why some of these clubs is, one, their academies ran a hell of a lot better, but also when they're actually selling these youth players, they've got competitive games under their belt. Whereas we can get our players to a decent enough standard, but they've just not been tested professionally yet. And I think that's where that whole argument comes in of oh yeah, but they need to go out and get minutes, they need to go out and get game time, they need to get loaned out. Whereas the reason why these other teams from abroad don't have that is they've already had the minutes, they're already produced and ready to go. And that's why teams will come in and pay big fees for them. Whereas we won't get that for teams in Scotland.
You guys on my side, right? We absolutely need to play them, and we need to give them minutes. And if you do, look at Nathan Patterson as an example. All right, knocked about the youth system, got some minutes in the first team, got a big move. Yeah, there's an argument that, that was quite lucky. We sold him at absolutely the right time. I completely agree with that. But the fact is, giving him that exposure at the first team and giving him the minutes generated that fee for us.
I think with the Nathan Patterson one, because me and Doug were actually talking about this, and Scotty to an extent as well, but around the whole Brentford piece, which I know me or Doug will touch on that later on. But I think that just seems to be a one-off, and I think that was just by chance that Tav was strangely out with an injury, which is like not been the case for Tav throughout his full time at Rangers. But I think when you look at the teams that we've got now, I think the reason why they don't get minutes is because they're not good enough. And there's a lot of players right now that have been touted for they are going to be great, or they were great at Motherwell, for example, for to use Bailey Rice. But these players have went through 3 or 4 different managers since they were going to be the next big thing, and none of them have seen them as good enough. So I just don't know. Yeah, that's right. They probably do need minutes, but are they good enough to get minutes for Rangers? And I think that's the problem that we've got. We've tried to do some loan spells for certain players. Alex Lowry being one of the most recent ones, and it just never really worked out for him. And look where he is now. He's probably even further away from the first team now than what he was before he went out in loan. So I just think right now, either down to the way we are set up or just the way Scottish youth football is set up, it's a hindrance, and I just don't think it works for us. And I don't think it's... apologies if that sounds blunt, but I just don't think it's worth the money that we probably invest into the youth setup through the lack of return that we get out with that one-off from Nathan Patterson. But some people in the comments might argue to say, yeah, but we got a good fee for him. But I think longer term, I just can't see any of these youth players either getting into the team or us getting a fee for them.
So is that down to the fact that they're not good enough, or is that down to the fact that they're not getting a chance? I mean, we're sitting here saying Bailey Rice isn't good enough. Kieran Dowell good enough? Would you not invest those minutes that you're using in Kieran Dowell, give him to Bailey Rice? Boom. All right, he might not make it, but at the minute, we're never going to know because the guy just isn't getting a chance because we're signing duffers from lower league England, paying them ridiculous wages where Bailey Rice will be on pennies compared to Dowell, and then we're getting all the minutes to Dowell.
All 12 of them. I think the thing about that, I mean, people keep telling me how great Bailey Rice is, particularly in comparison to, for example, I nearly called him Neil Lennon. Apologies to him. That's a horrible slur. That's a horrible slur to call.
Right, you've lost this debate, Doug. Off you pop.
That's a yellow card. Next one, I need to take you off. Next one, I need to take you off, mate.
What's the boy's name? The Motherwell lad.
Lennon Miller.
Lennon Miller. That's it. Apologies, Lennon Miller.
The Rangers Journal sends its apologies to Lennon Miller.
Yeah. Yeah, people keep telling me how much like Rice is on a par with him, or indeed better. Which, I'd love to believe people when they say that, but how true can that be when one is playing competitive football week in, week out, and the other one is not? You talked about, just on the point you talked about Nathan Patterson. He went to Hollywood Secondary School, which was chosen as the base for the SFA's primary development program. So he was in the ideal spot to develop as a player and have eyes on him from the get-go, which I think helped him in terms of his recognition. People knew who he was before he was playing in the first team and before he got those opportunities. And let's say the timing worked out well, that interest was kind of bubbling right when he got an opportunity to shine. And then obviously he was in the news as well for not so great reasons, and had the whole great little story because he came on, scored a goal within seconds. So it just kind of all coalesced really, really well and perfectly for that transfer, I feel, which is a bit more of a one-off. That doesn't happen to the vast majority. We struggle to bring them through. Like you say yourself, we've got Bailey Rice, who's apparently this great player, and he just doesn't get minutes. the only time players seem to get minutes and seem to benefit from it is when we have a major injury crisis. The last player to come through in any significant way, Ross McCausland, why did he come? Why did he get to play? Significant injuries. Before him, the player before that who got a significant playing time was King. Why did King get to play? Because we had a significant injury crisis. So again, going back to the point of are the players good enough? Well, apparently we only trust them when we absolutely have to. And that just feels a bit of a damning thing. That, you know, why is that? Is it that we don't trust them, or is it that Rangers is just ultimately not a good club for youth development because of the pressure and the way that we might react? We all say that we want to see young players playing, but how en masse would fans actually react if these young players came in and started making mistakes? I mean, the first team players that we have right now, a lot of them are the south side of 25, and they're getting it in the neck when they're making mistakes. So take another 2, 3, 4 years off of that if you're wanting to get these players in now. And that surely only amplifies and makes things worse for them.
I think that, for me, again, almost kind of makes my point, Doug. So you've rightly said, you know, we've historically given these guys chances in the last, certainly 5 years. We've given these guys chances when we've had massive injury issues. Why is that? Why are we waiting until we're completely in the poop, for want of a better term, before we give these guys chances? Because let's look at Ross McCausland as an example, right? He's come in, he's taken his chance. Is he going to be a superstar? I think the eye test suggests probably not, right? Is he able to fill a squad place that, as I said, saves us that 20 grand a week on, you know, an experienced head that is just going to fill a spot on the bench? Yes, it would. So again, that feeds into the strategic level debate. But also, if we were to sell that guy, all right, he's no going for Patterson money, but you could still make 500 a million on him, right? Not all sales have to be huge, mega bunker buster deals like the Patterson one. Even just those sort of $500,000, $1 million, even a couple of million, right? That's when it adds up. And if you're actually giving your guys minutes, and I'm not for 1 second advocating the old kind of drop everyone and just chuck in the youths, because, yeah, you're right, that would end horrendously. But if we're blooding these guys in, wee bit here, they're getting league experience with a team like Rangers, that in itself contributes towards the fee. And I think you said that, Doug. You know, there was a series of circumstances, and one of those was with Patterson that, you know, he forced his way in because of the injury crisis. It gave us that chance to platform what he could do. Someone came in with big money. Now, it's all well and good saying, you know, we haven't done it since. Correct, we haven't, because we've barely given anyone a chance other than potentially Ross McCausland.
I think the reason why these guys aren't getting the chance though is either down to two things. I think it's they're not ready to come into the team, or they're just not good enough. I think Bailey Rice will keep referring back to him because I think that's the one that's the most spoken about. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's seen off 4 different managers. I think he came in under Gerrard, he then went Gio, Beale, and now Clement, and he's nowhere now closer to the first team. He's getting older and older. Seems to do okay with the Scotland youth setup. But I think when I look across the players that are there, I think the reason why they only get a shot when there is like a serious injury crisis in a certain position is just because it's a last resort and we generally don't have anyone else. I think when it comes into the January window, no one's going to be crying out for Bailey Rice to come in as a 6. Everyone's going to be, we need to go out and get a number 6. It's not going to be that we're going to go, do you know what, let's try and get Bailey Rice into the midfield. Let's try and like add him in and integrate him into the team. Everyone will just want a better standard of midfielder. I think the problem when you're at a club like Rangers, we need to go and win titles, and that's the purpose of playing with the club. And I think as much as it might be great to say, yeah, it would be good to get some youth players in, they don't cost any money out with wages, but I just don't think we produce good enough players. I think there's arguments.
We're going to win the title this season, Kev.
Listen, there's always hope.
There's always hope, but
I don't think. I think if I'm Clement, right, because although fans might be sceptical of where the title's going to go this season, or they might be sceptical that we're going to win it, sorry, should I say? But if you're the manager of Rangers, it doesn't matter if fans think you're not going to win it. If we end up finishing 10 plus points behind Celtic, he'll be gone.
I think that's a different debate, to be fair, mate. I'm not entirely sure that.
So I think it's always going to be tough for a manager to come in and go, do you know what, I'm just going to go and try and integrate youth players into the team. Because as much as the board might turn around and say, oh, he's got our back and he's got our back, and see if we fall 15, 20 points behind Celtic, he'll leave. The fan pressure would get too much and the board would react and Clement would lose his job. And that's the same for any other manager that comes into the club. I think that's why there's always going to be a lack of that risk taken to be able to put the youth players into the starting 11 if they're not ready or if they're not good enough. I think if there's funds there to spend, we will go and buy someone of a much better standard. I think it's good to buy young. I think that is where we will make money. But I look at the likes of Jeffrey, Barron, people that are under 24 that we can sign that are already developed and ready to come into the first team, and they are still young, and that's where we'll make our money from. Even the likes of Lovelace, for example, we signed him at 15, 16, but he comes into the first team squad. I get his injuries have sort of put him back and forward between the B team and us. But I think it's good to buy young and bring them in and maybe have a couple of B team games, but with the plan on getting them into the first team straight away. I just think when you look over the time at Rangers, even going way back when under Walter Smith and stuff, you can maybe pick 5 players that have came out through the youth that have actually went and done well for Rangers. I just don't know. I don't know how the exact costs behind it. I know there was a thing that me and Doug read in about Brentford's costs, but it seemed really low. I'd imagine it probably a bit higher than that. But I just don't think we produce enough. Nor would I feel comfortable with the starting 11, even having 2 or 3 of the young boys in it just now, compared to what we've got.
Kev, I want to come back at you about something, right? So, seen in the comments here that Liverpool and Chelsea, right, they've got insane amount of players out on loan. Dave, sorry if I'm stealing a point.
No, crack on, mate.
Liverpool in the summer will get 27.5 million for Fabio Carvalho, 10 million for Bobby Clark. A sell-on for Dominic Solanke, so they get 9.2 million of that. 2.5 million for Luis Alberto. God knows when they done that deal. And then another 2.3 million for Kamil Grabara. Now Chelsea sold the likes of Omari Hutchison to Ipswich for 23.5. Conor Gallagher was a former youth player. He was 42 million quid. Isaac Matson, that played in the Champions League final, whilst on loan at Dortmund last season for 44.5 million to Villa. So is it not worth having a youth system, getting a proper structure, developing it, and then making it work for you?
I think the problem is that it's sort of out with the Rangers' control in terms of how Scottish football's set up, though, for our youth system. And I think that's what the big hindrance is, and Rangers probably can't have a direct influence on it other than make suggestions, which by all accounts they have tried to make suggestions, but are denied in terms of what they wanted to do moving forward. And I think when the kids are just sitting playing friendlies, I think to then change that into either, not even just so much playing competitive football, but then to come into Rangers where you need to win every single game where the pressure's on you, I think it's just different. Obviously down in the Premier League, it's hard. It's really hard to compare their fees to what we're going to ever get. I think it's obviously the English tax and the fact that they came up through Liverpool or Chelsea or Man U or Man City's academy. I think they automatically will just get more. I think just because of who the clubs are and then what they go on to do. Granted, if we were turning around and getting every single season at least one player going for a Patterson fee, I'd be sensing something different. I'd be like, no, that's class. We should go for that. Even if we just get one player a season that goes for 2 million plus, like Dave was mentioning earlier. But we don't. Out with Patterson, when was the last fee we really got out with development fees for players? It seems to be that even through the youth academies, if we get a player that is deemed to be potentially amazing in the future, they're gone before we can even give them the professional contract. Billy Gilmore, for an example, where we get absolute pennies for him, who then does go on to do good things. I think the problem when you are at a team like Rangers or any other Scottish team for that matter, I think if you've got a really good talent at a young age, we won't get him to the point where he makes the first team. So then we're just left with everyone that's just decent. I say decent, right? These young boys will be much better than me at football, right? But they'll be decent in comparison to maybe the likes of Gilmore. So it just seems to be, yeah, we can generate this great talent, but we don't really get anything for it. And we invest all that time and energy and money into developing these players to the point where as soon as one of these clubs like a Chelsea or a Liverpool or a Man City come in, they're gone. We even had one
Again,
in
is
Aston
that
Villa.
not-
Was it Weston? I could be wrong with the name.
Rory Sutton, wasn't it? The boy that went to Villa.
Aye.
Rory Wilson, was it?
That's it. I think he scored like 40 goals or something like that at youth level. And then before we could give him the pro contract, he's away into Villa.
But again, that fundamentally comes back to our approach at senior level and having that pathway. Take Billy Gilmore, right? Yeah, he's gone on, he got a platform, he did things. Part of me thinks if he'd stayed at Rangers, we'd have probably still been playing him in flipping B team games and when we had them in these friendlies. You know, we have to ultimately give these players opportunity at some point. And I'm not saying fill the team with them, but blooding in one here or there for the last 20, 30 minutes. Go back to your Bailey Rice example, right? Bailey Rice was higher rated than Lennon Miller. What's the difference in their development? You telling me Motherwell have better coaches? Doubt it. And if they do, I'd be quite worried. The one key difference in their development, Miller was given game time. Rice hasn't been.
Is playing for Motherwell the same as playing for Rangers?
Yeah.
No, it's not.
So,
But
and
again,
I think that's a key difference because I think if you're coming through our system, you have to have more up front prior to getting to the first team than if you have to go into a mid-table SPL team because it's not the same. The pressure isn't the same. The eyes aren't the same. I mean, there's certain clubs, I'll not name who because I don't think that's fair, but there's certain clubs that the level of football isn't necessarily all that much better than what some of the youth players might play if they were in an actual developed youth league, which to me is still the primary problem. And that's, to me, why one of the reasons why they're probably looked at and considered not ready to play because they're not getting any experience. John Sterling, at this point in his career, having spent is it a year and a half, 2 years at Rangers, the second most appearances he has in a competition is Premier League 2, right? Which is a fantastic competition. You know, it's basically just the Premier League, all the teams there, and you know they're playing properly. You know, prior to coming to us, he played in 10 separate competitions across various the EPL Championship, League One, various youth cups, the UEFA Youth Cup, things like that. Our young players just don't get as many opportunities as that. There are some youth cups that you get to play, and some of the smaller trophies. They are involved in some of the European ones by virtue of being here. But the level of football education and well, not even that, just the level of football, exposure is just so minimal that I think that makes that jump difficult. And I think that's why we have all these players sitting there and never quite making that step because they've not got the bit in the middle that they need to go from I'm an under 18 player to I'm a first team player. And that's that crucial youth team section, an under 21, a B team. That's why Brentford could do what they did because they were able to they went and bend their academy and just made a B team and picked out all the players that the biggest clubs didn't want but still had potential. A bunch of them have gone on to play for Brentford since, more than they ever got through when they did their academy, and then they've been able to sell players. But they could only do that because they were able to have a competitive B team, and that's something that again, you know, we've not got the option to do. So we can't even mirror the alternative to the academy at the moment because of the state of the national game, and it's such a major issue. And I just don't know how much we'll be able to achieve either way, whether we go academy or try something interesting and different. How well we can benefit either which way. It's hampered by our position in it's hampered by our national game, and it's, I was going to say set up, but lack their set up. Lack thereof would be better.
Mate. It's hampered by our thinking. Calvin Bassey came to us because Leicester weren't interested. He was signed for our youth academy. He stayed there for a season, so he wasn't deemed as first team material for us. Came in, got a chance, took it, cracked on from there. Season of development, running the Europa, before you know it again, going for big bucks. Now, admittedly, that's a youth that has been bought in, but at the same time, he was in our B team for a year, right? So he wasn't a first teamer. He was bought in as a youth, ploughed his way through that, played these Diddy games, which admittedly I do agree. I don't think the current setup is conducive to developing. I think it has to come from the first team until nationally we do sort that setup. But we gave him a chance. He took it. He went for a big fee. Now, I'm not saying that all these guys are going to do that, but if you don't give him a chance, how the hell do you know?
I think on the Bassey front as well, I don't know if like Doug's in the middle, like Googling the stats for it. I don't know if he'll be similar to. I can just see his glasses. I can see his glasses lighting up. I think he might fall into the same category as Sterling, though, but he's got plenty of minutes in the Premier League B League. So he's like played competitive football. We've then brought him in. We've signed him at a decent age. Again, did we get past it 19, 20? I don't know the exact age. But he's played a lot of competitive football still. Granted, wasn't in the Premier, like the actual proper Premier League. But he came in playing Premier League B football and played competitive football. I think the problem is when we're bringing them through the youth from the ages of 13 to towards the first team, they're not having any competitive football at all. And I just don't think they will ever be ready. And then the argument is they can go and send them out on loan. I think I seen someone posting about Morton had asked them to come in, or had asked Rangers for a few players on loan. I think the issue is when you are loaning out players, and Clement touched on it as well, he doesn't really like loaning out players he thinks is nearly at the first team level because they're going out and playing a completely different style of play where they're going to be expected at Rangers. Yeah. And I think that's why that never seems to work when we loan out players. I'll use Alex Lowry as an example now to Hearts. Seemed to do okay, then fell away, got injured, came back, and he's not played minutes for us out with the pre-season. So I think that seems to be where the gap is from going from Rangers youth team football to the first team. And I don't know, are we better looking at the likes of a Bassey as an example? Can we go get someone that has been developed elsewhere at maybe a Leicester that's played competitive football at a B level and then bring them in at a low fee and sell for a high profit? Would we be better off doing something like that rather than paying 20, 30 boys per age group per season along with the coaching staff to maybe make a couple of appearances here or there to cover an injury crisis and might then get the one-off a free transfer that we got for Patterson, which by the way they obviously completely overpaid for Patterson, and it is a shame. I know he's not worked out that well now for him. I did see he's back from injury, hopefully kicks on from here, but it's probably rare that we're going to see that as a sort of regular occurrence right now. And any of the other boys that we mentioned that came in through injury crisis, they haven't really set the world alight. King obviously was thrown in at a really challenging point in Gio's tenure in really tough games, and it never worked out for him. We've had two managers since, he's not featured. McCausland came in last season, and listen, he's came in and done a job, but if we had the likes of Cortez fit, Matondo fit, his minutes would be incredibly limited. He's getting used right now because he's probably the best of the bad bunch that we've had, and we're even having to try to use him out on the left just now. But as soon as these boys come back in, his minutes will come right down again, and it might then drop into that sort of Scott Wright minutes territory.
He's not even playing that many minutes right now, and those players aren't available. He's not a first choice player as it is. He's
again, if you're going to
come in when he's not as a second option.
If you're going to carry the bodies in our squad to go through an entire season, would you not rather someone on McCausland wages as opposed to bringing in, as I say, all right, it wouldn't be Dow because it's on the wing, but someone of that ilk that you're potentially going to have to pay 3, 4, 5 times their wages. And realistically, as you've just said, they're probably not going to play that much.
I prefer we had good players. I don't. Yeah. If we bring someone in instead of, I mean, you're framing it as if it's we have a youth player or we have Dowell. The third option is we buy good players, and if we pay them 5 times as much and win the title, great. I'll pay. I'm happy to pay 5 times as much if we are winning the title, if we're winning trophies.
You're not paying them, are you, Doug?
You do that. Well, we contribute towards that by putting in money into the club. And ultimately, you'll not find a single fan who will be complaining about finances if we're winning trebles. Not one. No one will it won't even approach their minds because all they'll care about is the fact that we're winning. Finances are a problem when you're not winning, because then you're not getting value for money. Then fair enough if it's crazy, if you're talking crazy money and you're driving the club into bankruptcy or whatever, yes, that's obviously a problem. But at the end of the day, our wages were, if we take our wages recently, they were only a problem because we were not getting the value for the money we were spending, because we were paying too much money for players that were on the sidelines. So one option is to replace those players with younger players, and that's grand. Where those younger players come from, I think is where you have options. So like Calvin Bassey, I mean, yes, I did start giggling because I like to make sure that my memory was correct, because I was like, he was not signed as a youth player. He was signed as a player to come in to potentially challenge for the team. He signed on the 6th of June and played his first game on the 9th of August. So he basically walked straight into the team. Yeah, and I was going to say, Gary, there was a comment brought up from Gary a little minute ago. The reason that he had a gap was because when he first came, his form wasn't great, which he's a young player coming into a big club. That's fair enough. So he dropped out for a little bit, and then he came back and obviously did what he did later on. I think that's a potentially good option for us. It's almost like kind of like the Brentford model, but minus the B team. We should be looking for the top players, I feel, that are like the top end of the Championship, almost ready for the Premiership, but Premiership clubs aren't quite ready to go for them yet. And so we can give them that step in the middle where they get to play at a place that has the pressures and the expectations of big clubs that will be in the Premiership, the opportunity to play in Europe and things like that, and give them, these players, the opportunity to show, actually, I am someone that you should be paying. By you, I mean, obviously, you're Chelsea's, Man United's, Man City's, whoever they may be, or indeed the step below that, if that's the more likely, probably. Or indeed foreign clubs. That's something else that we don't do enough of. Is I feel like when we have these conversations, we often frame them in the sort of Premiership angle. But one thing we need to think doing is start looking more at Europe in terms of selling big players to. A lot of our mid-tier sales, like I'll happily concede about the point about it's important that we value all of the hierarchy of sales, as long as we're making profits. Any profit is good, and obviously you want to maximize that. But I think one of the best examples of our transfer model, for example, in recent years was Fashion Sakala, who wasn't a huge sale, but we got him in for free and sold him for 4 million. And he had 2 decent seasons where he scored a bunch of goals and got a bunch of assists. That's a perfect little bit of turnaround there.
Doug, let's look at his squad a wee minute for a bit of context, right? Ridwan Yilmaz, complete waste of a jersey if he's come in. Mohamed Diamande, jury's out. Kieran Dowell, rotten. Nico Raskin, fake him in, rotten. Dujon Sterling, jury's out. For me, he's not durable. Cyril Dessers, don't even get me started. Rabbi Matondo, and that's not including the likes of John Lundstrom that we get rid of in the summer, Kemar Roof, etc., etc. You're saying we need to go out and buy the best players that are coming in on the daily job, mate.
I think, see, if you look at since Niels Coppins came in, though, I think there's definitely been a change in strategy. So I think there's definitely been a change in strategy in terms of what we're going for now since Niels Coppins came in, and I think that's probably what we'll see going forward. When you look at the likes of Shefty, when you look at the likes of Barron, Cortez, I think will become good. I think it's obviously frustrating with these injuries. I think we're definitely going for a different approach now, where we're looking at players that we can get in from abroad on lower wages at small fees that can hopefully generate high profits. And I think that's what we'll probably be looking towards going forward, just going by what we've looked at so far, as well as some of the players we were linked with that unfortunately never came to fruition. I know we are starting to plug the new show, the Scouting Report that's coming soon, another wee show that we're going to be doing. We're going to be looking at like younger players from abroad that Rangers could be interested in. So I think there's definitely a good method behind, can we look to get young players from abroad, i.e. 21 and younger, that have played competitive minutes in other leagues, that we can get in at small fees on small wages to then sell in for big profits. And I think when you look at Jeffrey, for example, Robbie Fraser within his position, coming through the youth academy, who's just been completely overlooked by Jeffrey because we've brought him in. He's played competitive minutes, he looks really good, and I can guarantee we'll get a higher fee for Jeffrey than what we ever will for Robbie Fraser. and Jeffrey will play so many more minutes than Robbie Fraser would. And I know so many people will be a big believer of get Fraser in, get him some minutes ahead of who right now. Because I certainly, if the lineup came out next weekend and Fraser was ahead of Jeffrey, I'd be gutted because of how good Jeffrey's doing. So I think you can definitely buy young players from across different leagues that will come in and make a difference without breaking the bank, without costing too much money, without going back into administration that someone left in the comments earlier on, and we can still go and challenge for titles. I just think we need to do better at it. I think Clement, probably at this point, I'm giving him the benefit of the due. He's had a lot to deal with in terms of getting rid of the bodies, like Scotty was mentioning, the likes of the Kemar Roofs of the world that were on high fees. You look at, I can't remember his name, Cantwell, players that came in from Championship that we tried to just bring alive their careers again, that had fell away. So I think we can go and buy young players from across the world that will come in and make a difference straight away. For one, compete for titles, but two, try and make his money as well.
You cannot guarantee that, though, Kev. You just can't guarantee it. I would argue, actually, as Scotty said, I mean, Cortez, can his body handle Scottish football? I think there's a big question over that. I think Jeff Day, yeah, I would say so far looks a success. I think, still a bit of work defensively maybe to do him, but probably does look at success. Diomande, I think he's okay. I don't think he set the header alight either. So if you look at these players, every time you sign someone from overseas or, even lower leagues in England, it is a bit of a punt. Now, I would agree. I think overall, Coppin's had a pretty decent hit rate so far, but it's still a punt. Whereas if you've got these guys, you're working with them from a young age, you know how they've developed. You can probably plot out their trajectory a lot better because you're actually working with them day in, day out, as opposed to just looking at scouting videos of them or seeing them in bounce games. So I think there's an argument, actually, you can develop a far better understanding of a player if they're playing with you consistently. The other thing, I think it was Doug that mentioned it about play styles before and sending them out on loan. Could be you, Kev, could be doing you a disservice here. If you bring in a player from another league, another team, again, it's pretty unlikely that they're going to have been playing the exact same formation and style tactically as what Rangers play. Whereas if you've got an organised top-down approach in the club, then the theory is those players in the youth leagues or even these friendly games, whatever, they should all be playing a similar set formation and tactics as to what the main team plays. And that's part of building them ready. And for me, ultimately, it comes back to, again, being brave enough to give them that chance. We're saying about Jeff Day, would he have got that chance if he was in our academy? Or would we have turned our nose up at it because he's just an academy boy and the fans will want us to go and sign someone on a bit of
He's
money?
Brazilian, he'd always get a look in. People love a Brazilian.
Fair, but the point stands.
But you're asking a club with no chairman, no CEO, no director of football, and no head of academy to be organised and set up.
Well,
you're on the loser
again. That's a whole different debate because I think there's some pretty significant structural changes needed about the club, and I do take that point, Doug. But I think longer term, absolutely.
I think it will continuously stem down to how Scotland's set up in terms of. I know if I'm going to end up saying it to him blue in the face because they're not playing competitive games. So if Jeffrey was in our academy and he was Scottish, let's just rebrand him. And he was Scottish and he came through with the same abilities.
Jeff.
He probably wouldn't have been ready for our team because he hasn't played any competitive football. But I think because the way clubs are set up abroad is they play competitive football from a young age, whereas we just don't have that at Rangers. And I think that's the problem. That's not a Rangers problem. That's just a Scottish football problem, like Doug was saying earlier on. And I suppose just to add something extra, right, and not to give them any credit, but rivals across the city, they've got an excellent player trading model, and none of that comes through their academy, or very limited amounts come through their academy. A lot of them are buying from abroad or from the English or League One or League Two. Matt O'Reilly came from buying it at small fees, small wages, and selling them on for huge profits. And I think that is what we are trying to replicate at Rangers. We're looking to have a strong player trading model, and I think we will get more joy from that, from signing players at a young age from other leagues that are just better developed and they've had more opportunity before coming into Rangers. And that's not me. And listen, if we turn around and there's a massive change in terms of the way Scotland's set up and we start to have a B League again and we start to develop players and they start to get minutes, I'd be more than happy with that. But I think the problem is that doesn't look like that's going to happen in the near future. Scotland seem to be happy with the way that we're setting up the youth football. And that's just a hindrance to not only Rangers, but to Scotland in general. So I think we can sit and have all these arguments that we should be doing it, and the only way they're going to get chances is by getting minutes. They're just never going to get it as things stands. And I don't think we could get in ahead of academy, we could get the structure right at the club. I still just don't think that makes us in a stronger position to give youth a chance. Just because
again, it fundamentally for me comes back to they need to be getting first team games, right? It has to be genuine, competitive first team games for me. You talk about the youth academy, and I think John Adams in the comment there, he's just talked about Lewis Mayo. When Lewis Mayo was coming through our academy, there was a B League, right? There was competitive B team games.
Reserve football.
Aye. So we punt him off because he's not good enough, like we do. He goes and signs for Killie. I'm not saying he's great, but he has been relatively solid for them overall. And instead, we've gone out and spent $1.5 million on a 32-year-old Proper. Now, is Proper slightly better? Yeah, probably he is. Is that enough to justify spending $1.5 million plus the associated wages?
I think
he's a relatively small wages, to be fair, Proper, but I would take Proper over Lewis Mayo every day of the week. I'd probably go centre back, probably. Over
Kilmarnock are ninth and have lost 17 goals. We're third and we've lost 4 goals. Who's got the better defence? How many goals
from the striker, Doug?
How many goals would Leon have scored if they were playing Kelly?
Yeah.
Aye, but Doug, put a wee bit of context on it, mate. Like, it's completely different teams. Like,
we're talking about
that is the context, though. That is the context.
But it's Kilmarnock.
Looking good with Kilmarnock.
Your points are the Ross, mate.
But that's the whole point. That's the point. Because we're looking good for Kilmarnock is not the same as looking good for Rangers.
So you telling me that he is massively worse than Proper? Just Mayo, not Kilmarnock v Rangers, not the team goals.
Yes.
I'm saying if you put Proper into Kilmarnock become a better team than if you put Mayo into Kilmarnock.
I would argue that Proper is twice a player, or probably more than what Mayo is. And that's not to do with Mayo a disservice, by the way. I think he has done okay. Kelly had a good season last season, by all accounts. But I think to compare the both of them is harsh. I think, one, Proper's got a lot more experience, just in age and also games, minutes, playing at a higher level than what Mayo has. And maybe if we're still on this podcast in 9 years' time, we can maybe compare Mayo's career to Proper's career. But I think right now, as things stand, I would rather have Proper. I don't think he's like breaking the bank. I think his wages are relatively low. I think I'd read somewhere, I think he was only on like 4K or something like that a week at his previous club. So I don't think we're spending a great deal. I don't know about that fee, by the way. I read it on Twitter somewhere. But I don't think we'll be. Don't worry. But I don't think that we were paying. I don't think we'll be paying him an astronomical amount.
I don't think
will be on more.
Comparing Lewis Mayo to Robin Proper's not realistic, because Lewis Mayo playing in a Kilmarnock defence, a Kilmarnock that is such a worse team than Rangers are.
And that's the thing. If you're playing him,
less resources in just everything like that, you can't even mention them in the same breath. You put Lewis. Hold on, let me finish my point. You put Lewis Mayo in the Rangers backline. I'm not saying he's better or worse, but what I'm saying is it's a completely different team he's got to play in, because it's a completely different challenge. It's challenges in front of him domestically.
Can I offer you
massively enhanced?
Right, Dave, I'll come to you first. We need a wee bit of control over this. It's coming into a rabble.
I was just going to add to that. You're saying about putting Proper in the Rangers backline, and I agree. It's a totally different team, front to back. So he's not going to be conceding the 17 goals or whatever. But I think more importantly, he develops a lot bloody quicker playing with that type of player as opposed to playing with Killie's backline.
Right?
Or does he make a mistake in the first game and get absolutely destroyed?
Probably not, because there's going to be a certain element of patience given for the Rangers fans because he's come through the youth system and he's
Patience,
won it.
Rangers fans.
Aye. Look what's happened with Leon King. Do you hate
Can I-
Leon
can-
King? Hold
well,
on, hold
actually-
on. Do you hate Leon King? Do you dislike Leon King? Or do you think Rangers done him a disservice?
Can I
Answer
it's
a
actually-
question.
it's
No,
actually-
answer
it's actually-
a question first.
Let me finish first.
Answer a
That's
question
actually yes. I hate Leon King. He's the worst defender I've ever seen in my entire life. Asterisk,
Nonsense.
no.
But you've got a degree of sympathy for him.
It's
because
funny
he
that
could
you
put
mention
in
him because
a
that's
bad
what I was
thing.
going to. That's what I was going to say earlier a minute ago when you put Dave on. That was what I was going to suggest as a better comparison. How do you rate Mayo versus King?
They're two completely different players. King's
Yeah.
not
Well,
good,
but they're both players
Mayo's
who
a better
played.
player.
Right, they're both players who predominantly, in terms of their Rangers careers, were central defenders. Obviously, Mayo's still a defender. I don't know what position King's meant to be getting picked for at the moment, but
King knows what position he's been picked for, mate.
but that I think, I mean, if you were to, if I was just saying, do you think Mayo is significantly better than King?
Yes, because he's got how many more? He's got about 100 more first team appearances than King.
I would agree with that. And
That
to
doesn't
add
make you a
to
better
that,
player.
King
Makes you
isn't
more
a great
experienced as a better player.
example because when King was chucked into that team, he was playing alongside another stand-in centre back. He didn't have that experienced head. You know, it wasn't like it was Goldson he was playing with. He was playing with freaking James Sands against not Liverpool. The other games, you know,
I played against Liverpool.
I don't think they're comparable, to be honest, because again, it's bedding them in, and this is where I was saying you have to be careful. It's not a case of ripping the whole thing up and playing a first 11 full of youth players. That wouldn't work. But if you're bedding them in slowly, bit at a time, with experienced, decent players, rather than this forced into it by necessity that you guys talked about at the top of the pod, then that, frankly, hell of a speeds up their development.
For me,
Dave, see if-
what I was trying to say was Leon King's got a degree of sympathy from the Rangers support because of the first team appearances he's had. Right, he's been punted into Champions League matches and we ended up with worst regular team in the Champions League because of it. So we've all got a degree of sympathy on. We've had a harsh say on his development. We've affected his development in a negative way, which is a point I was trying to kind of get across. If Leon King had the loan moves, I think he would be a much better player than what he is now. I don't think it's basically we could be sitting here saying the same thing about Leon King when he leaves Rangers in a couple of years as to what we're saying about Lewis Mayo. So Kev, when you go, mate.
So I'm just going to ask Dave, just what I think you originally brought up the Lewis Mayo and Proper things. You said who would you rather have? So if it came to the end of the season and Proper was to move on, whether we sold him, whatever, would you be comfortable that his direct replacement would be Lewis Mayo and he comes in and he's a starting centre back for Rangers? Or would you rather go in and spend money on an experienced centre half? Because that's what everyone was crying out for in the summer, was an experienced centre half.
You've got Leon King already, if that's the scenario. You've got one for free.
And I think that's my point is, would I want to go out and buy him from Kilmarnock? No, probably not. But we had this guy. He was in our side. He was signed to us on a contract. We were paying him minimal wages. For him to step into a slot in that squad, yeah, I'd be comfortable with that. Am I saying he should be starting every single game? No, probably not. But has he got a role to play where he can fill some of that slot? We can actually see how he develops with a better caliber of player around him. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Quickly, I want to touch upon just like the last point before we wrap up because we've nearly hit 50 minutes mark.
Jeez.
How, Dave, I'll come to you first on it. How can we improve the youth development going forward? What's the plan?
I think there's two elements to it, mate. One is actually what the opposition tonight have touched on. So I think you really need that national kind of wrap around it. You need that complete league approach that does allow these guys a chance. The other side of it for me is changing our thinking at first team level, right? We know we need to shrink the wage bill. We know that we need to trade players. The only way you achieve that is by giving these guys minutes. Not necessarily as I'm not saying they should be first name on the team sheet, but I absolutely do think when you're running a game out, you're 3 up. And okay, that doesn't happen often at the minute, but you know what I mean. When you're ahead in games and you're comfortable, we should absolutely be giving these minutes to our youth as opposed to duffers that are past it that we've signed to fill a squad spot like Dow.
Aye, definitely. Doug, debate hat off, mate. How do we fix Rangers' youth system?
Well, just very quickly, I wanted to just address Dave's point about the unfairness of comparing King and Mayo. I think it's fair. I think it's fair to compare them for two reasons. One, you can take account of the circumstances when you make your assessment. It's not just, oh, he was in a bad position, so we can't compare at all. You can still compare. You just factor that in. King has played 6 games in Europe. Mayo has played 6 games in Europe. They've got comparable experience. But that was that point.
Debate hat
right, well, debate half off. I don't believe in almost everything I've said tonight, so that's the first thing to add. I do think there's things. Well, that was the point. I was here to argue against youth football. So I'm pro youth football. I agree. The main point that I agree with is that Scottish football is not set up for us to get the best out of our youth education. And until it is, I don't think we're going to be able to get the best out of our youth players. I want to see more young players coming through. And I do think that they'll provide better value than, for example, Kieran Dowell. But at the same time, I do think that the problem with having Kieran Dowell is it's not that I do agree with the point I made about it's not a binary play a young player, a young Rangers player, or play Kieran Dowell. There is still that middle option of buy Calvin Bassey. So I think we have to try and make the best of all of our options to maximise things for us and get the best results. Youth players are important for multiple points. I mean, we touched on the finances. Youth players are really important from an FFP point of view as well, because they count as maximum profit when they're sold. So even if we only sell them for a small amount, it's 100% profit in terms of FFP, which is really important, particularly if we're apparently, on lists and stuff like that. So even if we get a player, say for example, a Fraser, who's, we've just signed him on a new contract, he's still not getting games. Eventually, if we still manage to get a couple of 100,000 for him, which I think we should be able to do at the very minimum, there's that aspect which is important for the club in terms of the long-term goal. But the biggest thing that I think that we've not touched on at all when it comes to youth football for me is that it's not, yes, the most important thing is always the success of the club, but youth football also has a huge aspect of in terms of its impact on the community. And how Rangers stand within its community, and I think that is super important for the club. The club is more than just the football; it's about the community and the way it brings people together. And a big part of that is young players. Starting from the very, very bottom. When you're 5 years old, you've got your well, for me, it was my Coisty top. For the more modern youngsters, it'll have been Morelos or players like that. And taking those first steps and getting into the academy and building through. And that's a huge thing. And to me, there's an element of financial loss that is worth it for the community impact, which I think is really important. But in terms of how do we improve it, first and foremost, get ahead of an academy. That's the first thing we need to do, so that they can strategize as to how we can get competitive, structured football organized for ourselves as a club. If it's not going to be within a national framework. So we've done some good steps in that. We've played some really good level of teams in Europe. But if I was the club, I would try and be really bold about it. Maybe go out to some clubs that are maybe have similar problems and try and form some kind of league. Even if it's just a small 5 or 6 teams, so that we can get some regular football on the go.
You mean something along the lines of that Atlantic League, but for youth, Doug?
Yeah, I mean, that would work. It just needs to be competitive and regular. That's the main thing. We need to find some way to give our young players regular competitive football, and because that's the only way. I talked earlier about bridging the gap. We've got player. I basically think we have players that go from like youth to like I say 18, but nowadays kids they're coming in at like 16 and plus, but they're coming up to that point, and then there's this gap where between the kind of that and their early 20s where they should be getting that final step before making it into the first team, and I don't think we have that final step, and we need to fix that if we're going to get players through successfully in terms of them actually getting in the team. Otherwise, I think we'll continue just to have players that are kind of almost there but not quite. They'll play some games. They'll McCauslands basically. They'll come in. They'll do okay, but they'll ultimately not be good enough, and we'll sell them on.
Right. Okay. Good points, mate. Kev, how do you fix the youth system? Just a quick.
So head of academy, like the guys are saying, and then I think just the hope that Scotland can sort itself out for competitive football. I think that the other two key contributors, we can obviously influence one of them, head of academy, the Scotland football stuff. I'm hoping they're looking at the national setup now, and it seems to be falling off a cliff. And hopefully we can start to generate more young Scottish talent.
Oh, definitely. Right, well, that is the debate well and truly over. You'll all be happy to know nobody won because there's no right answers to it.
I won because I converted Doug.
I think it was already.
You can't convert someone who was.
Lads, I'm trying to close this pod off.
You started arguing.
Lads, I'm trying to close the pod off. Right, right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We'll try and get the Monaco Philippe Clement interview will be released over the weekend. The Club Bruges one was released today, so please head on over. At least smash a like button on it. We're trying to do a deep delve into the manager so that we can try and get around some of the mythical theories that are going around about the gaffer just now. So please head on over and check out. Head on over on all our socials as well and check us out. And we'll be back on Monday at 6:30. See you all then. Cheers.